Hi, today we're going to talk about customizing the data analytics demo using Terraform. You can now add your own Terraform scripts to create additional resources within the demo. Currently, the demo deploys using Terraform, and then additional resources are deployed using Airflow. And some of those resources have been using gcloud to do their deployments, but now we can use Terraform to do those deployments, which gives us some additional benefits, like being able to tear down the environment when it's no longer required. So why would you use Terraform versus building your own demo? By using Terraform within the demo, you can take advantage of all the sample data, you can take advantage of the different formats, security, private IP addresses. All that time-consuming pre-work has been done, and it's available for you to reuse. Airflow will deploy these resources and can tear the resources down after a certain number of hours. If you set the hours to 0, it will run indefinitely. But if you specify a set number of hours, it will tear down that additional resources, which will save on costs. And this is simple standard Terraform, so there's nothing new to learn. So let's take a look. There's a DAG called sample Terraform bucket deploy, and this you can use as a template. And we'll note that the DAG uses this same code is deployed as a deploy and a destroy. So that lets you easily create these templates, and I'll show you how that works. So let's scroll down and take a look at the deploy. So we have a deploy here, and we'll look at an execution. And we'll click on the new one. And what this will do is going to do a couple steps. It's going to execute Terraform. It's going to write a JSON file with the date and time of deployment. And then since this is in deploy mode, these 3 steps will be skipped. They'll be marked success. But when we're in deploy versus destroy mode, it determines which steps gets executed. So deploy will execute these 2 steps. Destroy is going to determine if it's time to delete the environment, if the number of hours have passed. If it's time to delete, we'll re-execute the same Terraform script with a -destroy flag, and then we will delete the JSON file that has our date and time of deployment. But since this is deploy, we'll jump in and look at the how it deploys. So looking at the log here, we'll see the first thing that happens is we check to see if Terraform is installed. If Terraform's not installed, it will install Terraform for you. And this has to be done in the same step because we don't want to install Terraform on a different worker node in Composer than the one we're executing our Terraform on. We'll then validate Terraform and run an apply. In this case, we created a bucket, and then we will exit. So pretty straightforward, just a simple couple commands here to install Terraform and then to execute the Terraform. And then this is our log file, and I'll show you where this gets written out. So this will write out a JSON file, and it wrote out a JSON file with a date and time. So if you want to see where this file is located, you can go to buckets, you can go to your Composer bucket, and it goes to the data folder. This data folder is also mounted as a mount point inside your Composer environment, so you can access this as though it's a regular mounted directory. And then we have our sample Terraform bucket deploy JSON. So this JSON file will have the date and time that we just saw in it. And if you wanted to trigger a destroy, because let's say you didn't want to wait for X number of hours, you could upload this with a backdated date and time, and it should trigger your destroy. So that's the deploy. Let's jump into the destroy real quick and see how that works, and we'll go through the source code. So the destroy step here, you should see one that's executed, and we'll jump into the delete environment to see if it's time to actually delete the environment. So this will say if the environment is greater than X number of hours, so it's returning a true in this case, meaning it's time to delete. And then the Terraform will execute, and this will execute in destroy mode. So you should see that we're running, and it has a -destroy here, and it's going to tear down the environment. And then once the environment is torn down, we will delete the JSON file. So we're ready for a new deployment. So let's take a look at this, and this should begin, and it deletes the file from the Composer directory. So we have the deploy and the destroy working, and we'll take a look at the source code. So within Cloud Composer, if you go to DAGs and we go to sample Terraform deploy, we have our script. And this script is basically copied and deployed twice to Airflow, once with a dash deploy and once with a dash destroy. So there's some parameters you need to set up top here, and they're labeled. You need a path to your Terraform files. You'll need a DAG prefix name. In this case, we're naming it the same thing we're naming over here. We have our auto delete hours, and then we have a bash script that actually runs the Terraform. You do need to pass in a project ID and impersonation service account. These are required. And then you have your additional parameters to Terraform. And this is where we check the file name if it has a destroy, and it's either in destroy mode or it's in deploy mode. So that mode will change based upon the file name. So let's jump over to the Terraform script itself. So within the data folder, you'll see a Terraform directory. And then in this case, we have our Terraform scripts. So our Terraform script has to have these couple of lines in here, and you can copy these. And then this is our impersonation. So we impersonate our Terraform user from our Composer user. So Composer is running this script, and that Composer service account will impersonate the Terraform account that was used to do the full deployment, and then you would deploy your specific resources. We have our variables. So we have some common variables here, which is the project ID and impersonation. And then we have a backend, so we can put our state within our code bucket. So those are up there in GitHub. And then let's look at the bash script. So we have a bash script here, and that's also in the data folder. So I'm going to minimize this, and we should have our bash script. And this is going to do our skipping, because we need to run this step even in deploy mode. We simply exit early, and then we install Terraform here, and then we pass in our parameters to our Terraform. So you really just need to update this with the parameters that are being passed in, and then I echo it out so you can see the debug mode that's being echoed out. So those are the pieces. And then if you want to include this in the demo, like as part of the full deployment, you can add your scripts to the overall demo, which is in the Terraform modules. You'll go to the deploy files, and within here, there's a Dataplex Terraform deploy. So any of these that are labeled the Terraform deploy, you'll upload your DAG, you'll upload the DAG and rename it as destroy, and then you'll upload your state files, your variable files, your main resource file, and that bash script. So once you've done all that, you can have the benefit of this running and being torn down automatically directly within Airflow. So hopefully that helps. It should let you reuse pieces of the demo, enhance it for your own needs, and that's all there is to it. Thanks for watching. Bye.